All right, what do we have in front of us? We have some big issues. It seems that the world, as I think I've said to you before, has discovered the internet. Everyone wants a piece of it. Every piece of the internet touches almost every part of our commercial, social, family life at this point, at least in the areas that have the internet. The issue about where the internet is not is one that we can never, ever forget. And everything we do, in my mind, around ensuring that we govern ourselves well on the internet, I do not like the word internet governance, and I can talk a little bit about that. The way we govern ourselves on the internet, about the internet, around the internet, one of our primary motivations has got to be to ensure that the internet is everywhere. So that if we do things in this internet governance space, that is going to stop that deployment, the evolution, and the innovation on the internet. It's the wrong thing to do. So as I've said everywhere that I speak, don't break it. First, we don't break it. And then we have to, of course, keep innovating. And we're doing that according to principles that are deep within us, and I think have proven successful. So while the world has changed, the principles by which we think about these issues remain the same, and they remain very powerful. So this internet governance issue, as we all know and have been involved in the various months, is very much in the forefront. A couple things, right? We've got to figure out the IGF issue. We know that there's a push to the IGF to be more result-oriented, to have more resolutions. Some people want to do this, some people don't. We need to have a conversation about this, and we need to figure out how the IGF in Brazil becomes an ongoing evolving fora for the kinds of conversations and outputs that many of the stakeholders are calling for. Second, or A, that would be A, but B is I am amazed and very encouraged by the organic bottom-up movement for regional and area IGF. Those are the conversations that are happening close to where the issues are bubbling up. They're likely to be more accessible to the various stakeholders who want to be in that conversation. And at least in my head, I see this as sort of a global network of networks of people happening that we should be able to connect on the internet. and we should be able to have a story that is more oriented toward the issues that arise in all of the areas of the globe. So I think this is enormously encouraging. The WSIS conversation coming up this year is going to be important in that there are many who want to think about the very origin of the governance that was put in place those many years ago. This is an important conversation for us to have. I posted something I think a week or so ago, and it was in response to the Net Mundial initiative, but I tried to suggest to you that we ought to step back a little bit and have our own conversation about where we think this whole area ought to be and what the framework is that we might be able to coalesce around. What I hear from so many is there are models out there that are working. There is no perfect model. There are models that are more effective than others. There are pieces of each of the model that we can perhaps come up with a kind of framework, that kind of pieces that have to go together for real and authentic multi-stakeholder decision making. So we've got to put some meat on the bones of that multi-stakeholder idea. And you all are close to this, and you really need to be in this conversation about that. Net Mundial. I suggested that we perhaps organize ourselves in a little more specific way around the larger questions and then some of the more specific questions as to whether and how we want to interact with that initiative. My proposal that I won't don't have here for the screen today, is really to do a kind of survey that I think at staff are pretty good at putting together, getting it out to all of you, and do something in writing so that folks who are not as likely to speak or to write long notes on the lists might respond to it, and we can coordinate that, bring it together, and decide what our next move is. The second big issue of the year is security, and it's security writ large. And as Olaf would say to me, it's all about trust. It's all about trust. It's all about trust in the technology. It's all about trust in the way the technology is used and perhaps abused. And we need to, as guardians, as stewards of the technology and of the principles we believe in so much, be able to articulate how to restore trust and how to work through what are going to be some difficult issues. Just this week, the whole encryption issue is again on the list. It's again out in the press. If you encrypt, is that going to fragment the internet in some way, because folks will not allow that? But is that better for the user? How are we going to navigate the next stage on the security of the individual, the security of the network, and then to answer the questions of nation states as to their notions of security? Some of those things are quite legitimate, and some, as we know and worry about, are not. So how are we going to respond? What is the Internet Society's positioning, and what is it we want to achieve in this area over the next months? I think it's enormously important. And then finally, and always, now I'm just talking about these big categories, which you'll see described fairly well in our action plan. How do we ensure that the internet is everywhere in the world and is accessible to everyone who wants to use it? These are economic questions, they're social questions, they are technical questions. We are very well immersed in these issues at the Internet Society. You are very immersed in these issues. We need to focus on a couple of areas and see whether we can make some big changes. I have some notions on this. You saw that Sophie went off to work with Brahima. That could be very useful. You know, I've talked a lot about what is the underlying infrastructure that's needed here, and how do we get that how do we incent the private sector, the public sector to ensure, for instance, that you have long haul, so that we can ensure that we have the ability to move those bits across big continents, that we have the ability, therefore, to innovate more locally. We're going to talk a lot with the wireless community, who doesn't quite, I don't think yet, see themselves as part of the internet ecosystem, but is surely the next access technology that will bring the internet into the hands of the rest of the world. It's hugely important. I'll go to GSMA. I want to have those conversations. I want to understand it better. You all and the internet community need to help me talk with the wireless folks around what the fundamental issues are as these things tend to converge. The IXP work we have done, I think, has been terrific. 37 this year, I think. Jane and Dawit and that team in Africa has been all over it. The team in Latin America is doing the kind of technical capacity building. In Asia, I think the push, because of where we are on the internet, there's been a lot of work around infrastructure, around wireless infrastructure. We need to have a coherent strategy with respect to what piece we can play in that internet development area. And as you know, Raul is all over this. So who are the people? Who are the point people? Sally's got the policy piece. Olaf has the technical piece. Raul really has the global engagement. You all know each other. We meet each other out on the road. Let's make sure we have a very rigorous, vigorous conversation. It doesn't have to be one way. Indeed, it should be multifaceted and multi-stakeholder on these issues. So when I think about the substantive big areas, those are the big objectives we have for this year. Underneath those objectives are initiatives that we are going to get off the ground and very specific projects that will allow us to meet those objectives. Much of that really is going to require that, and let me get to this point, we see ourselves as a full society who talk and work and collaborate with each other to meet those big goals. There's a lot of us, so getting us to focus on some big, bold ideas that we can actually move, I think, is our challenge, and that's going to require conversation to get there, and I am committed to that conversation, as I hope you are. Let me talk about the assets, the human assets that I really come to understand in the Internet Society. We have this fabulous staff. We have you, the chapters around the world who are growing, by the way. It looks like our membership may be up between 12 and 15% this year. That's the work you are doing, bringing folks into the existing chapters, 7 new chapters this year in parts of the world where they were not. Our regional bureaus, I think, are working more closely. That's our goal. We've posted for the Middle Eastern Bureau. We mean it when we say we want to be global and we want to be everywhere. So we know about the staff and the chapters. We know about our board. When I looked around and realized the number of folks who are former board members of the ISOC community, the Internet Society community, it seems to me they have special expertise we want to call upon. We have inductees to our Hall of Fame who are just that. They're the Hall of Fame folks of the Internet, and it seems to me that we want to engage them more in the challenges in 2015. The Pastel Award winners. These are incredible, incredible people, all of which are part of us. And we need to communicate better with each other, and we need to work off of each other and use the assets we have to influence the world on the issues we care about. So how do we move forward with some of the things you've asked us to do with respect to your work in the chapters? First, I think and hope that, notwithstanding what I call our cranky gene around various issues, and in this case around the Connect, I think it's starting through your intercession and your pushing and the very good work of Fernando and others, that medium is starting to work. Not as a list, and we're trying to preserve the list that many of you like, but also as a collaborative tool. I'd like to see us use that more, and your input there is going to be important. We know and respect that you are looking for resources at times to do local kinds of projects. Raul has been working quite hard with staff on trying to refashion our grant program so that we can be more focused on the local concerns of chapters. More on that to come. And we think that we need to bring the society as a whole into a forum, our forum, where we can have a global conversation about what the Internet Society is about and what it wants to do at any particular time. And the board and the staff have agreed that this year at around our meeting in Auckland, we will have the first of what I hope will be yearly, if we can make it work, a virtual meeting of the Internet Society. So inspired by the fact that the chapters have, at least for our sister agency, our sister organization, ICANN, put together fabulous hubs, etc. We see that we can make that work. And we're going to try and are going to talk to you about how to do a virtual town hall meeting of the whole of our global society. I'm not sure how we're going to pull this off, but we're already trying to figure out the technology we would need to have regional hubs, to have live streaming, as Paul has been developing, to have a virtual coming together of all of us. This is going to take some work. We need a focused agenda. We probably will need some time where the regional areas come together in a kind of a workshop or roundtable to deal with particular areas, and then we come together and bring them together as a society and talk about it. I see a lot of places where we can fashion roundtables to talk about particular issues and then to share our insights and concerns together as a society. You're going to have a lot of questions about this. I've just given you, I call this a jump ball. I've just told you if this is going to be what we're going to work toward. It's going to take us a lot of work. We have 6 months to get there. The board is on board, and I'm hoping to get you on board as a way to say we're all in this together. I think it's enormously important. Now, that sort of development of the whole of our society is one of our huge agenda items. Both Raul, Aisha, and others are really focused on this area as we go through to bring in that multi-stakeholder character and the multi-stakeholder input that makes us who we are. The other big piece we have to do is tell our story better. We've got to be able to have a narrative that any one of us, any place in the world, can step up and say, here's what we're for, here's who we believe we are, here's why what we have to tell you is important, and here's the outcomes we need to have. We need to reach new audiences. We need to not only talk to ourselves, we need to influence others who don't have our point of view, and to do that we need an effective way to communicate in a larger way. I've introduced to you James Wood. He's on our staff. He spent the last 2 weeks here with us in Reston. I think we're off to a good start. You're going to see a whole lot happen this year. And finally, our culture. Always our culture. Always our culture. Our culture is deeply rooted in our values. It is deeply rooted in the values of the internet itself. And I think we all believe on staff, and I think you all believe in the chapters and in the membership, that our culture should reflect the very values of the internet. Open, global, inclusive, accessible, dynamic, evolving, and innovative. All of those words we use around the internet have to be about the society itself. And we have to keep committing and recommitting ourselves to that, and making sure we check ourselves that we are doing those kind of inclusive kinds of things. All right, I'm going to stop talking in about 1 minute. I just want to tell you my resolutions for the year. Why not? It's a new year. We should have some resolutions. Here's mine, and you could check me on this at the end of the year. 1, I want a bias for action. If we see things, we should do things. We may do little things. We may do larger things. And in your own communities, if you see that we need to address something, we need to have a bias for doing something about it. And we need to self-organize, and we need to move. Or as I say here, we need to make a little noise. It's time. Number 2, we need to use this internet. We can communicate this way. We're getting better and better about it. That's another big of our initiatives this year. We have to use the connectivity we have. Our technology is improving all the time. I think we have to be on the leading edge of the internet wherever the internet is, and where it is not, we have to use ourselves as the seeds for creating that connectivity. And then finally, I think we have to keep it positive. There's a lot of challenges. Our personality should be a can-do personality. It should be a positive personality. It should be showing the way forward. We do have a cranky gene. I do too, by the way, where we get annoyed because, for goodness sakes, can't you see that we have the right way? We're going to have to put that aside, I think. We're going to influence people by showing the way in a positive way. And so Resolution 3 for me is be not cranky, be positive. And when I'm being cranky, somebody say, hey, remember you said? No. It's about positive. Every day, be positive. But for my bias to action, then what do we do with the things that we think are important, and how do we stay focused? I'm very clear that if we want to get anything done, we can't do everything. So we have to figure out what it is we're going to move on. We have a plan for the year. Input it as much as you like. Think about this July meeting that I'd like to convene, this global convening of the whole of us, how we might run it. Give me some good conversations around this. I will see folks around the world, probably in Singapore next. I'm expecting a lot of you, or many of you may be there. Then after that, we tend to be able to see each other in places. Let's have conversations. Meanwhile, we will be putting out some proposals and trying to organize ourselves so that we can coherently say, we are the Internet Society. Here's what we believe. Here's what we would like to see happen as the world changes, as the Internet evolves. Here's the way we would like to see it so that it is the Internet for everyone. So with that, thank you so much. Happy New Year. And I will see you along the trail or on the Internet.